Good morning. Okay. So, first item on the agenda is the board approve and execute the minutes of the meeting from January the 11th.
Second.
Commissioner Claypool? Commissioner Ryan?
Yes.
Commissioner Spillier?
Right.
Okay, and next, there's 3 days of approvals, so I'll go over them real quickly. On February 1st, for the Airport Authority, I acknowledged and approved the reimbursement request number 6 for FAA Grant Project 33900541916, which is also related to 33954192016, to construct taxi lanes, crack seal the runway, design airfield lighting system, and PAPI runway 29 in the amount of $12,740, the FAA portion, $1,416.04 ODOT portion with no local match. Then concurred regarding a liquor license, concurred with Clarendon Township trustees in requesting a hearing to be held on the liquor license requested by Dolgen Midwest LLC, DBA Dollar General Store, number 18803, located at 12375 Aquila Road, Chardon. That's permit number CNEW 2234815-2900. On February 2nd, for the county home, I approved the hiring of Rose Carver, the position of part-time attendant, number 1504-1, to be effective February 8th, 2018, at a rate of $11.58 per hour with a 1-year probationary period. This offer of employment is contingent upon successful completion of the required pre-employment conditions. For Water Resources, I accepted the resignation of Gail Knight, full-time maintenance worker, number 2330, to be effective February 9th, 2018, and granted permission to advertise for the position of full-time maintenance worker, number 2330, at the Merritt Road Garage. This position will remain posted until filled. Finally, on February 5th, for the county home, I amended the motion from February 2nd, 2018 to adjust the start date to read, approve hiring Rose Carver to the position of part-time attendant number 1504-1 to be effective February 5th, 2018 at a rate of $11.58 per hour with a 1-year probationary period. This offer of employment is contingent upon the successful completion of the required pre-employment conditions.
Been a busy guy.
Good morning, Andrew.
Good morning. Okay, the financials before you this morning include a revenue certification for the Sheriff's Office for their law enforcement fund. There's a couple of supplemental and appropriations transfers. Appropriation transfer for transit from vehicles to building for some emergency HVAC repairs that they need to do. Supplemental appropriations for the general fund carryover distribution. Cash transfers include a cash transfer from the general fund to transit capital fund to cover those emergency HVAC repairs. Cash transfers from the general fund to court technology to fund courthouse video conferencing project. And a cash transfer from the general fund to computer equipment improvement fund to provide the funds in the case of emergency server or network switch replacements in the county. Encumbrances include an encumbrance from the Department on Aging for Schraff and King Company LPA to provide legal counseling to senior citizens. Travel requests from the Building Department for Daniel Spada to attend the Building Officials Conference in Dublin, Ohio, and Mike Mahallison to attend the 2018 Ohio Building Officials Joint Education Conference. Travel requests from Water Resources for Laura Weber and Jim Reeder to attend a Government and Regulatory Affairs workshop in Lewis Center, Ohio. Encumbrances from maintenance for Burton Carpet Shop for carpeting at the county courthouse, and also a then and now certificate from the Sheriff's Office for UES Geauga for inmate medical bills. Some of the vouchers of note: $10,075 from ADP to Inter Wireless Incorporated for black box review and upgrade contract. $66,076.04 from the Commissioner's Office to Trumbull County Treasurer's Office for Geauga's share of the 11th District Court of Appeals expenses. $65,673.31 from the Commissioner's Office to Ohio State University for our first quarter funding of the OSU education extension. $35,421.76 from Water Resources to Jack Gibson Construction Company for pay request number 13 of the Russell Park Wastewater Treatment Plant Rehabilitation Project.
Commissioner's Office is requesting the Board approve and execute resolution number 18-013, itemizing the financials for the meeting of February 6, 2018.
Second.
Commissioner Claypool? Commissioner Lennon?
Yes.
Commissioner Spillier?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Morning, Kelly.
Morning, Kelly.
Good morning.
How you doing?
Do you want me to read all three together?
I think so. That'd probably be the easiest way.
Or four, yeah.
This is the year 4.
Okay. I'm here this morning to put through the certificate of determination of subsequent exempt for category exclusions, and that is basically stating that for our projects coming up for BF17 grant, that there is no environmental impact on any of the projects. This is just housekeeping paperwork. It's the beginning of getting busy on this year's projects.
When will these go off the bid?
It depends. This is the first step, and then they'll give us the release of funds, and then I can start putting together the bid packages. This is a 2-year grant for the first time, so I want to be careful and not going out to bid too soon. Otherwise, you see what happens. Our bids come in way off from our estimates from the beginning, and then it becomes a mess. So Jessica and I are going to work hard together and make sure we time it really close and get the bids close to the project. So like the paving project for BDC, that's going to depend on when they're ready. You know, we're going to work with the recipients to see what works for them.
Okay.
So I could tell you that the first 2 projects that we really want to get started on right away will be the Opera House elevator
Yeah.
and Berkshire ADA.
Right.
We want to get that done definitely first thing in the spring.
So
those will be-
if we, I mean, I think we had initial discussion about that elevator as far as costs, right? But we haven't talked to anyone as far as bids to fix that elevator? Or?
Correct. We had estimates.
Estimates, okay,
Yeah,
okay.
I know that the maintenance department did what they had to last year to get up and running. This portion of it is to do the necessary upgrades to get it, basically, we're rebuilding the
Entire elevator.
Pretty much,
Yeah.
Without literally replacing it, we're
Hmm.
replacing all the parts that weren't able to be replaced before.
Okay. So, so this being a 2-year grant program, so this year we won't have projects to choose from again until
Right.
next year for what, for 20?
For, let's see, this will be for 2018 and 19, so 19 will apply for 20 and 21.
Okay, okay. All right, thank you.
Together?
Yeah, definitely.
Here's all done.
Okay.
Community and Economic Development Office is requesting the Board approve and authorize the President of the Board to execute the Ohio Development Services Agency certification of determination of subsequent exemption for a categorical exclusion project in regards to the Geauga County Airport Authority ADA Restrooms Upgrade Project under Grant BF 1718-1AZ1. Community and Economic Development Office is requesting the Board approve and authorize the President of the Board to execute the Ohio Development Services Agency certification of determination of subsequent exemption for a categorical exclusion project in regards to the Berkshire Local School District's ADA restrooms upgrade and ADA handicapped ramp project under Grant BF 1718-1AZ1. I gotta get used to that. Community and Economic Development Office is requesting the Board approve and authorize the President and the Board to execute the Ohio Development Services Agency certification of determination of subsequent exemption for a categorical exclusion project in regards to the DDC clinic project under BF 1718-1AZ1. Community and Economic Development Office is requesting the Board approve and authorize the President and the Board to execute the Ohio Development Services Agency certification of determination of subsequent exemption for a categorical exclusion project in regards to the Geauga County Commissioners Maintenance Department Elevator Repairs Project under Grant BF 1718-1AZ1.
Second?
Commissioner Claypool? Commissioner Lennon?
Yes.
Commissioner Spillier?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to be very curious to see what this infamous elevator bill is going to look like
Hopefully it'll be with the estimate
Yeah.
that it was going to be last year when we were doing all of this, so.
Yeah.
I don't see why it would change that much. It's not too much of a construction project.
Right.
It should be pretty straightforward, so we should be stay right within budget.
Yeah.
Is it gonna feel safer when we're done? Because when you get in
I
it right now,
know.
it still shakes and it drops.
I hope so. We can make that request.
Yeah. If they want to maintain the historic value of the elevator, they may want to rebuild it so it still has that, like the right at a,
Right.
Tower of Terror at Epcot. So,
Yeah.
that's-
Right.
Let's hope
that
not.
elevator's kind of scary, so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So number 8 is Commissioner's Office requesting the board concur with Munson Township trustees in not requesting a hearing on the liquor license requested by Canna Winery Holdings LLC doing business as Canna Winery located at 10036 Wilson Mills Road in Chardon.
Need a motion? So moved. Second?
Commissioner Claypool? Commissioner Lennon?
Yes.
Commissioner Spillier?
Hi. And next is a request to move into executive session with Jobs and Family Services requesting the board move into executive session for the purpose of discussing discipline of a public employee. And Craig?
You think talk to Jim first, or before we start going into executive sessions? Or no?
Yeah.
I've got the
Yeah,
Budget Commission organizational meeting at 10.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Stand by.
Which number is that?
Just move closer.
It's
Yeah, no problem. I did.
Yeah, I didn't get on that.
No.
Yeah.
the very first one.
For Jim?
Okay.
Oh,
Thanks.
Yeah.
sorry.
All right. Good morning.
Morning.
Thanks for coming out.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for taking the, sorry, cut Craig.
It's okay. Sure, it's important.
It is important.
It is.
Okay, so one of the issues I know I've talked to each of you about, but that's been in the news, a lot of the different counties and the state and some other large cities have been pursuing litigation against the manufacturers and distributors of painkillers, essentially, put it most simply. So the theory behind this is that the drug manufacturers, to an extent, but significantly drug distributors, both at the kind of the customer level, but also like kind of regional distribution of these drugs, that they violated certain aspects of federal law. And in violating federal law in order to make profits and distribute as many drugs as they possibly could, they've kind of created a situation where there is an addict base that's really been created or enhanced due to the actions of the drug companies and the drug distributors in order to push their products out. So like any business, if you manufacture something, your goal is to get your product out there and sell your product. But the problem is their products are highly addictive, and the more they push them out on people and the more they sell, the more people become addicted to them. There has been a link established between this behavior by the drug distributors and drug manufacturers and what we're seeing with the heroin crisis, which we kind of call the opioid crisis, is what it really is. I can't tell you just from my own experience how many times, we've run into a situation where, gosh, I can't believe that person would use heroin, or, but oftentimes, they've been hooked by these prescription medications. I'll tell you, and they do push them on you. I mean, anybody who's been to the hospital, will tell you. I mean, if you've been to the hospital, they push them. Even recently, my wife had a baby a year and a half ago. How's your pain? You want some Percocets?
Right.
No, I'm good. You want some? They asked her like 5 times.
Right.
So, when you kind of take that behavior and it culminates, you have a huge problem. And what was actually really fascinating to me, talking to some of the lawyers that are doing this litigation that we're going to talk about, when you look at a map and you see how many drugs have been distributed. So what they did was they were able to get a hold of the distribution numbers from these regional distribution companies and looked at where most of the pills were going to. And the areas where most of the pills were going to, like West Virginia, it's that kind of the Appalachia areas, Ohio, down, if you look on a map, it's almost like you overlaid a map of the heroin crisis, and it almost exactly correlates with the pill distribution that's been going on for a number of years from these companies. I mean, it's really actually quite amazing when you see how it correlates. So, looking at all that, I think a lot of people have said, well, you know, the public spent a lot of, this is a public health crisis, and we've spent a lot of money. I know Ralph was on the board. We did the heroin initiative that Ralph spearheaded as a commissioner, you know, where a lot of money was funneled into the sheriff's office, my office, the courts. We've spent a lot of money on this. I mean, a lot of recovery services. I mean, Craig could do an hour up here about how this has just decimated his budget and all the placements. You know, because when parents are doing heroin, I mean, the kids have to go somewhere else, probably forever. I mean, sadly, that's usually what's happening. So, you know, we, the taxpayers, have been paying all those costs, and our county especially has actually funneled direct dollars into combating both on the law enforcement side and on the recovery side, and just the fallout from things like child placement. So, one of the things I started looking into last fall is, you know, do we want to get involved in some of this litigation to try to, recover some of the money that we spent, and also try to recover money that we will spend dealing with the fallout here. And, you know, I'm a conservative guy, so I hate to say this, but, you know, sometimes with these large corporations, the only thing that really gets their attention is lawsuits, or the threat of a lawsuit. I mean, let's be honest. So, I think that, you know, I started looking at, there's two different approaches, so I'll summarize them like this, and most of you know that, you guys all know this, but there's two different approaches that have been going on. And Lake and Ashtabula County pursued a specific approach. I'm recommending a different approach. And I, to be honest with you, I really struggled with the two approaches. One approach is to file kind of state law claims in our court here. So we would sue these manufacturers and distributors, and we would sue them in Geauga County. And we would just be our county filing kind of our own standalone lawsuit against these companies. At first, that was very attractive to me, that option, because I like the option of our own lawsuit. You know, we're not lumped in with everybody else. I like that it's in our county. So those were attractive options to me. But the more I looked into this, the more I became convinced that the other approach is better. So that's what I'm recommending, is the other approach. I might be wrong. I'm not always right. But I really did weigh this, and it's been a process that our office has gone through for months, looking at the different, I've talked to a bunch of different lawyers that handle this. This approach is getting involved in federal litigation, okay, which normally would go against everything I'm for, because I do think that a local approach is better. But in this instance, I think that going forward and getting involved in this federal litigation is probably the correct step. So what had happened, and I know I'm talking a lot, you guys have to listen to me, sorry. What had happened, to kind of recap, is all these lawsuits are getting filed in federal court all over the country. And what happens is, and at that stage, that's when I was looking at the local approach. What happens is there's something called multi-district litigation, MDL, okay? So MDL, so multi-district litigation. And what happens is, if all the same type of lawsuits are being filed all over the country in all these different federal courts, what the federal courts have come up with is a system of forced consolidation of lawsuits. And there's actually a board in the federal court system, an MDL board, and they say, okay, you know, we've got 15,000, you know, lawsuits all over the country, all about the same thing. Instead of clogging every single court, why don't we force them all to be consolidated into one big case and all put them in the same court, somewhere in the United States? And it happens with some with cases like this. So, kind of fast forwarding, the MDL board hears all of this, they look at all these cases, and they decide, you know what, we're going to put these cases with Judge Polster in Cleveland, Ohio, in the Northern District. So every single one of these federal lawsuits is now literally in our backyard, in our federal Northern District of Ohio, and even in our division. I mean, it's our federal court downtown that covers Geauga County. Is
this in all United States or
Yes.
districts?
No, all the United States. So now when that happened, I thought, well, okay, number one, Judge Polster is, I would say, I think he's a Clinton appointee. He's definitely more favorable to plaintiffs in cases. I think would be going out on a limb there. But he's also extremely knowledgeable, extremely fair, and I think that, and he's handled these types of cases before, these MDL cases, so that's one of the reasons. The other reason they said that they put it in Ohio was we're one of the hardest hit. Mm-hmm. And a lot of these cases are in Ohio and West Virginia, and it would be easiest for all of those litigants to go to federal court. So once the case was put in our backyard, I thought, well, maybe we should look more closely at the federal approach, because 6 months ago I would have recommended the local option. Now that the cases have been consolidated, the MDL is situated in Cleveland, and Judge Polster's handling it, I've kind of switched my thoughts, and I'm recommending that we do the federal approach. If this was in California, no, we wouldn't be having this conversation. We'd be talking about a different group of lawyers, and we'd be filing suit locally. Although even then, what Judge Polster's done is, he's even pressuring the Ohio Attorney General to bring his state case into the federal litigation. Mm-hmm. So what Judge Polster's saying is, hey, listen, there's going to be a settlement here. These drug companies are going to pay up. I'm kind of paraphrasing, but they're going to pay money. They're going to settle this, and you better get under our umbrella if you want to be involved in that. And that's really kind of coming from the judge. And I agree with what he's saying. I mean, that makes sense.
I mean, the defendants are going to tell them to kick rocks and say get into federal court anyway, right? I mean,
exactly. You're 100% right.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're the drug company, are you going to negotiate with Geauga County and Geauga County Court of Common Pleas? Right. Or are you going to say, hey, listen, if we're going to pay out money, we're going to get rid of 15,000 cases? Right. You know what I mean? Or however many there are. I don't think there's quite that many. But so that's kind of where we're at. So I switched to the approach of, let's look at this federal litigation. Let's look at getting involved, Geauga County getting involved in the MDL. It would be our own standalone lawsuit in federal court. So what would be happening here is a lawsuit would be filed. Geauga County would be the plaintiff. Mm-hmm. The commissioners would be bringing the action under the revised code, and you would be bringing the county's claims in federal court. Now, like all the other, we would get swept into the MDL, like all the other claims, but we would have our own standalone case, and it would be us versus them, but it would be under the umbrella of all the other cases.
So how does that impact the recovery, dollar amounts? So if you're competing with a pool of all the United States, and there's some sort of settlement, $70 million or $1 billion or something, it's diluted. How does this work if we've got our own lawsuit?
Well, so what happens with an MDL, which plaintiffs generally don't like MDLs. And what happens is you get forced into it. And then when there's a settlement, you're pretty much forced into the settlement of the MDL to an extent. And what I mean by that is when you're in, the court can't completely force a settlement on you. I mean, they can't completely do that. But it becomes a situation where you pretty much have to do the settlement. You don't have to, but you have to go along with, at least under that umbrella.
I thought the unique thing was about this settlement was, we actually get to somewhat, depending on what the settlement amount is, but you get to negotiate and make a plea for, obviously past damages and what you foresee, helping fix the problem in the future, what those dollar amounts might be, and there's some type of formula they were talking about.
Yeah, it's called a. You guys are getting the MDL law school class here.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's called a damage matrix. Okay,
Right.
so there's a damages matrix that's created, and that's actually what what they're arguing about in settlement. It's not a normal case where it's like, okay, you know, you got rear-ended. These are your medical bills. Let's you know, what are you going to settle for an amount of money? There's an amount of money out there. I mean, that I'm assuming will exceed $1 billion. I mean, if we're really talking about resolving this the right way. But so let's say we reach that type of settlement, you know, or that's what's being negotiated through the MDL. What they're really settling is, and they're arguing about, is the formula to compute damages for the individual plaintiffs, and that's what the damages matrix is.
Right.
So what it is we plug in all our different numbers into the, and that's where a lot of the negotiating will happen, and that's where, on the front end, we won't be doing a lot, but on the back end, we will be doing a lot if there is a settlement, because we will need to put forward all of our costs and estimates and what's happened specifically in our county. We need to plug that into the damages matrix, and we need to massage it and plug it in the right way to maximize our recovery.
Right.
But what they're really, when they say they reached a settlement, what they've really settled is what the damage matrix is, what this formula is that's going to compute what the damages are for the individual plaintiffs. It's a weird way of doing these cases, but in a way, it's the only way that you can really give customized individual results in a way that, you know, over thousands of cases, right?
Right.
So
maybe you could explain that Geauga County doesn't have to come up with any upfront expenses.
Well, that was just going back. So then there's a bunch of different firms that are actually doing this, you know, that are involved in federal litigation. And so the one that, you know, that I met with, Tim was at the meeting, Dave was at the meeting. We met with them downtown. We met with the firm that, and really it's the local firm. Spangenberg Shibley is a local firm. So, and they're a big injury firm and we don't normally, I mean, we've never dealt with them, I don't think ever. The county, I mean, that's just not, they usually represent injured plaintiffs is what their specialty is. So it's not something where we would ever really deal with a firm like that. But the reason I was interested in Spangenberg's office is they're one of their lead partners there. He's actually, and now we'll get more into the MDL, he's one of the liaison counsel in this litigation. So what happens in the MDL is there's a federal judge, and he's in charge of all this litigation. So all the litigation is for all these cases is in front of Judge Polster. And what Judge Polster does is he actually, which seems like an odd arrangement, and it is unusual, Judge Polster then picks out a few lawyers that are engaged in the litigation to be the liaison counsel. So he's dealing, because he's not going to deal with 150 lawyers. I mean, he will sometimes, but 150 lawyers can't sit down and talk to the judge at pre-trial. But what he'll do is he'll have meetings with the liaison counsel. He'll work with them, and there's liaison counsel for both sides. He'll work with them in a small group setting to try to work out some of these issues, and then that gets pushed out to the larger group. So if you're a lawyer representing a plaintiff and you're not the liaison counsel, you're actually at kind of a disadvantage. Actually, you're at a big disadvantage, and I think your client's at a disadvantage, frankly. So Peter Weinberger is one of the liaison counsel, which I think is a good thing. That was, and then what really turned it to me for me was Attorney Weinberger and this firm. They were the liaison counsel for Judge Polster for the last MDL he handled. So Judge Polster had another one of these MDLs on a whole other issue, and the Attorney Weinberger had one of these cases. He was one of the liaison counsel with this judge for this same type of litigation on the one that the judge just completed. And the MDL panel, my recollection is they pointed to Judge Polster's experience with that MDL and saying, "Hey, he did a great job with this one. Let's let's hand this over to him." So there's just a lot of factors that went into it. So you got two approaches. I'm recommending the federal approach, and then I'm recommending this law firm because they're the local law firm that's one of the liaison counsel. I think it's just the best position to put ourselves in. And then they're hooked in with this lawyer down in Florida, which, I know you guys, I can only have one commissioner at the meeting, but the guy down in Florida that I was very impressed with.
Oh, yeah. He's
I
going to be
mean,
the head litigator, that guy.
Yeah, he's the one that really has been working on this for years and figured a lot of this stuff out about how the distribution worked and how it's really impacted the heroin crisis and opioid crisis. I was thoroughly impressed with him.
That guy was like a fighter pilot. I mean, he's the real deal.
Yeah, he was, and this is like all he's doing.
Yeah,
I mean, this is his thing.
Yeah.
I mean, you talk about a subject matter expert. I was extremely impressed with him.
Yeah.
So I really liked. I liked what I saw. We're swept up in a big federal litigation. There's going to be this damage matrix. A lot of this is uncertain. A lot of this may be future damages. Who knows what that is? And I don't know that there's a good answer, but based upon all of that, my recommendation is to go the federal route and go with these guys. You have the agreement in front of you.
My biggest concern, a number of questions. You and I talked in the hall before coming in here a little bit. One of the still questions that kind of eats at me a little bit. We're on the hook for 30%. They've told us that the maximum would be, given all attorney fees and all that kind of stuff, would be 50%, and that we would never be on the hook. Any of that, their payments would come out of recovery. But there is a recovery. I mean, their recovery isn't necessarily monetary. It could be an equitable fund, which we have no control over, and you and I talked about this again in the hall. I just want to make sure that we're not going to ever be on the hook to pay out a 30% due bill to our attorneys, because that can get huge if there's some special arrangement made that doesn't involve us getting funds and stuff. Can you talk about that? You gave me a good answer, and I wanted everybody to hear it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't really see downside here because, there's no fee if there's no recovery, and there's no litigation expense reimbursement if there's no recovery. So they're taking on all the risk, and they must really believe in the case because, I mean, they've got to be spending seven figures on this stuff, I would think.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, already. Well, so to get to your point, I looked at this. This is a bit of an unusual contingency fee agreement, but I understand why, because this is an unusual case. And I think that what they're concerned with is one thing they're looking at, because my big issue with them is how are we going to link law enforcement costs associated with the illicit use of heroin to what the drug manufacturers and drug distributors did. Making that causal link is to me is a harder case to make. And I think it can be made, and they've retained experts to make that link. But that's an issue. There's a causation issue there. Whereas I think they have an easier causation argument on, hey, you've created all these addicts. We've got a lot of money that we're going to spend going forward. How are we going to include that into this damages matrix? And I think what they're worried about, so there may be this kind of prospective recovery fund, like you're talking about, that they reference in here, where okay, going forward, we've got damages. We need to access the fund. Well, they don't want to not get fees on that, which I understand because they would have earned a fee. They kind of go out of their way in here to say that you're never going to have to pay fees with public money, and public money is only going to include recovery money.
Unless lawful, there is a little.
Yeah,
I'm always afraid of attorneys. You know how that goes because you put these little wrinkles in there. You never.
Well, and the way. So here's what I would say. I would say that the problem with this is because it is very unique litigation. They don't even have the answers to how this is going to look in the future, and I certainly don't. But I think the protection here is we ultimately always have the decision whether or not to settle. So, even with the MDL comes up with a damage matrix that they somewhat impose on the plaintiffs, we don't ever have to do it unless this board agrees to do it. I mean, so at some point, I'm going to come to the board and I'm going to say, this is where we're at with the settlement. This is how it will impact us dollars and cents wise. And if it's not a net gain for us, we're not going to do it. I mean, and we always have that option. I don't ever see this as there not being a net gain for us, right? That's the goal. We want a net gain.
Absolutely. That's my fear.
But part of this is, too, I think that we have a greater public responsibility to try to modify the behavior of these drug companies and drug
Absolutely.
distributors.
Absolutely.
You know, whether that puts money in our pocket or not,
Yeah.
I think it's important for Geauga County to stand up and say,
Yeah.
hey,
That's
look
right.
what you've done to, look
Yeah.
what you've done to
We're
our
not
city.
That's kind of like I heard him
Yeah.
saying when we were down there, is it's not just the monetary damages, it's the
public
ability to
health.
change the behavior of these companies going forward.
Exactly.
Well, let's face
Reduce
it, you know, they were not following, the distributors have federal regulations they have to follow. They weren't doing that.
Right.
They were pumping pills in, lining their pockets with
Right.
billions of dollars and leaving us with the mess to clean up.
Yep.
You know, it's about time, you know, we're not taking this lying down anymore. So I think on top of the monetary gain, the message it's sending, I think we've had enough.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and so I think that's part of it. I mean, you represent the people in this county, they elect you.
Yeah.
You know,
And
you
so-
have an opportunity
And
to,
so you're comfortable, there's no surprises in here, though? I mean, I'm 100% on board with what everybody's saying here, even if we get zero, I don't expect that. That would be okay, as long as we didn't have to pay out of pocket some huge number, amount of money at the end of the day, because we were surprised. That was my only
yeah,
question for that.
listen, there's certainly uncertainty with this, okay? But I don't see there ever being a situation where there's a net loss for the county. I just don't, because number one, we wouldn't agree to that.
Right.
And we always hold that,
Right.
you know,
We're
always
not
just
gonna-
walk away
yeah,
if that was, you know.
that's right.
But, you know, again, these lawyers aren't gonna negotiate a settlement for all their clients where their clients aren't getting any money either. I mean, that's just not how this works.
And there's a
So-
cap on it, I think, too. also.
Yeah, there's a cap on their fees and expenses.
Yeah.
I mean, the 30% fee rate is actually very low.
Yeah, it's fair. I thought it'd be
I mean,
higher.
they put a 50% cap on it because I think they're worried about what their expenses are gonna be. And so, you know, I think it would be unusual to get to a 50%, but I would say that the 30% is very low. I mean, for one of these guys, usually these are about 40% on the
I mean,
fee end.
typically these kind of cases drag on, but it sounded like this judge, you know, with the public health crisis that it is, wants some action quickly. You know, he understands what a crisis we're in, and you know, he's made public comment that he wants to see some results in a timely fashion. So hopefully this thing won't drag on for, you know, like the tobacco cases or something like that, you know.
Yeah, I think that, I don't think it'll drag, at first I thought, you know, we'll drag on, because everything drags on. But the judge does seem motivated, and what they just had like their kind of their first big settlement conference, and the judge asked the Attorney General to come, the Ohio Attorney General, Mike DeWine, to come to the conference, and he came. You know, even though he's not in the case.
Right.
So that to me was a clear indicator that, you know, ground zero of this thing is in Cleveland with Judge Polster. We need to get on board with this.
Absolutely. I'm with you.
So, okay. So, and the procedure for this is actually it's like it's an application for appointment of outside counsel. So we have to jointly make the application,
Okay.
the prosecutor and the board.
Okay.
We jointly apply to the court of common pleas, and then the judge would technically have to appoint them and authorize them to represent the county. I've already talked to Judge Byrd about it, and he said that's fine. He has no issue with it, and he knows that this is coming his way, so I'll probably take that over there today.
Do we have something to sign here?
Yeah, you have to sign the application, and then you also, I'll have you sign the engagement,
The exhibit.
yeah, the exhibit 1 there. I'll have you sign it, and you should have two of them, so,
I do.
yeah, so
I did
if you,
3 sets.
okay, don't sign the one that has the exhibit sticker on it, just sign the other one, and then I just did that so that you could see that it would have an exhibit, but just sign the standalone one, and then I'll attach it to the original, because I'm gonna have to take the original and file it in court.
So this is the one you want them to sign
Yes,
with your signature.
yeah. The original fee agreement, or engagement agreement, have them sign, and then have them sign the court application. They don't need to sign the exhibit. Yeah, not the copy. Yeah, you're good. That's good.
Yeah, so there's the one with the
Yeah.
sticker, and then there was the second one.
Yeah, but I'm gonna have to take all the originals, but I'll,
And then I made 2 extra sets.
okay.
So let me pull the stickies off of the one. No, I want that one.
You scared me
You
there.
want them to sign this one, you want them to sign that one.
So,
So they don't need to sign in separate places.
I just have them sign one, and then I'll, because whatever you want to do.
But I always keep a copy of
Okay,
whatever
that's
they
fine.
sign, so
Yeah.
that's,
But then I'll take the original and file it with the court today, walk it through. Hopefully Judge Bird will sign it today, and then I'll get it over to the lawyers to get it going. So they said that they think they could file our claim, file our separate lawsuit within a couple weeks.
So what do you think the time horizon's gonna be on this? 50 years or 10 years or 2 years?
Boy, I'll tell you, the federal judge seems motivated.
Yeah.
I think that I could see something happening within a couple of years. I could see major movement on this happening by the end of this year.
Right.
The way he's been conducting the proceedings, so.
And I think these distributors, they know the writing's on the wall here.
Yeah,
you
they're
know.
probably gonna be anxious just to get it,
Yeah.
sweep it under the carpet, get it done.
Yeah, the torches and pitchforks are out.
Yeah, they really are. I mean, let's face it, they were pimping drugs in suits and ties, is what they were doing. They knew how addictive this stuff was. They deceived the public. And, I was blown away by the statistics, that map you were talking about. Towns with 400 or 500 people, residents in it, and they were sending 3 million pills in
Yeah.
a year.
Yeah.
To it. I mean, it's just.
Yeah, I mean,
so-
this area, in Ohio and West Virginia, Kentucky, the utilization is far above the average for the nation.
Yeah.
It's jaw-dropping.
Yeah.
You see how many pills.
And the racketeering and the RICO charges, that's what they're filing against.
Oh,
them.
yeah.
Yeah, with the manufacturers and the distributors, being in cahoots,
Not to go on, but they created a customer base. And you talk about, well, heroin, this isn't heroin, they're distributing pharmaceuticals. Well, they created a customer base for the Mexican cartels.
Absolutely.
That's what happened here.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody, there aren't hundreds of thousands of people who are like, yeah, I'm going to go shoot up heroin,
Mhm.
okay? But there's hundreds of thousands of people who their doctor has given them hundreds and hundreds of oxys and Percocets.
And let's face it, the natural transgression, after you've gone through all of your resources and you can't afford these pills anymore, the progression's to go to the cheap street drugs, And
Yeah, they're a lot cheaper.
that's the link.
But that's what I mean.
Yeah.
I mean, so what happened with the Mexican cartels? Basically, price undercut
Yeah.
with much more dangerous product and unregulated product.
Right.
They undercut the pharmaceutical companies.
Yeah.
But the pharmaceutical companies, in my opinion, created the customer base.
Absolutely. There's plenty of blame to go around, and I even think going all the way to the top. I mean, the governments that take a little blame in there too. With the lobbyists and all the way to the top. They were.
Well, they have laws in place that weren't followed. So that's
Yeah.
the other thing. It's
Yeah.
like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Everyone always wants to pass more laws. I'm more big on let's
Yeah.
enforce the ones that are on the books.
Right. Right. No, I appreciate you taking so much time into exploring this, and I know there's a lot to weed through, and it's difficult to pick which case to get involved with, but I feel really confident that we're on the right path here.
Well, I appreciate the three of
Yeah.
you being so engaged in this and
Mhm.
interested. That always helps when you're. I know all of you were
Mhm.
very very interested in pushing forward on this, and I think it's the right thing for our residents.
Absolutely. Good.
So then we'll go ahead and read the prosecutor's office is requesting the board approve and execute the application for appointment of outside counsel, memorandum in support and engagement to represent regarding Geauga County civil suit against those legally responsible for the wrongful distribution of prescription opiates and damages caused thereby.
So,
Second?
Commissioner Claypool?
yeah.
Commissioner Lennon?
Yes.
Commissioner Spudler?
Aye.
Great.
Thank you so
Thank you,
much.
Jim.
Really appreciate it.
You didn't do the
I did all three.
execute the engagement letter.
It's in there. That's the, what do you mean?
See. No. The what you
Resolution.
said. Yeah.
The three documents that were in there, where's the
Oh,
engagement to
memory.
represent? It's in there.
Okay.
I'm like, let me try it, all three of them in there.
She's on.
It's hard to catch Christie.
Yeah. I try every day.
I was like, I had to decipher through what I was trying to do, because there was the exhibit and then there was the second, which was the exact as the first, and I'm like, that's why there was 3 stickies on there.
You're good.
I know it's confusing. See, I confused myself.
Well, and then when you sent me the updated paperwork, it was only the first part, so then I had to go back to the exhibit and make sure that everything was good. So
Just lost stuff. I know everybody does.
I sorted through all of it yesterday and made all the copies and put all the stickies on it.
We need to get some kind of state legislation to change the title of that position from clerk to something more appropriate to the level of sophistication we have to deal with. 'Cause people just, oh, she's the clerk, you know, that's one more to it than that.
Yeah.
I don't know, I've got my eye on some other state laws that probably need to be changed. When it comes to
There's a lot of
responsibilities.
them.
Right?
Well, yeah.
Good job.
Oh, yeah, definitely, it's good. It's really good.
Yeah, thank you guys
No,
for
thank
for
you.
working with me on
What
this.
I'll do is I'll give you the top 2 copies, and then once you get everything signed, if you can send me the second version.
Yes,
You keep the original, send me the second one back, and then I'll attach it to the other one, so that we have
I will do it.
a copy of everything.
Once the application and exhibit and judgment entries are filed, it'll be scanned, it'll be on the court docket too. It'll be scanned in.
Well, we like to have physical.
I know.
Jim, when do you think these cases will start being heard, or how does it begin, or?
Like I said, the judge just had the giant settlement conference with everybody last week. That's why I was kind of pushing to get this thing
Yeah.
in front of you and get it, it's just, everything's a process.
So
But,
you think they'll start getting quickly, or within the year, or is it something?
I don't know. I think that
Or there'll be
I
some
think that they
settlement?
have to hash out some of these causation issues like we talked about.
Mhm.
I think the drug companies, I get the sense from reading everything that they may be willing to roll over to an extent on the, that their distribution practices ran afoul of federal law, which is no small thing.
Yeah.
But the getting them to step up and admitting that they caused this heroin crisis, that's a tall order. And I don't know that they'll ever admit that, although they may end up throwing some money at that. But that's really the causation, the big causation issue here. I mean, I deal with the fallout of this every day. Craig deals with the fallout every day. I think they're responsible because again, they created this customer base. But somebody going out and using illegal substances, it's hard to link that back to a legitimate,
I think there's an argument there, though. You look at I bet you if you go talk to a lot of the people that started, with, maybe an injury and they're getting legal pills, and they've, got to that point where they either ran out of pills, the doctor wouldn't give them to them anymore, or ran out of money, and they made that leap to, the street drugs. I bet you if you go talk to all these addicts, a lot of them are like that.
Well, and the crackdown on the doctors is what pushed them there too. Because
Right,
what
that
happened,
too,
they're like,
yeah.
oh my, then they're like, oh my gosh, we're prescribing all these pills. So our answer is, the doctors are just not allowed to prescribe them any pills anymore. Well, then you just cut off the supply to people that you caused to become addicted.
Right, and everyone's
So where are they
freaking
going
out.
to go?
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
If you talk to the docs, though, Tim was right to some degree, government is partially at fault here. Obamacare pushed out this concept of pain. And so one of the questions that's asked in the hospital is, what is your pain level? And if you've got an increased pain level, well, here's more pills.
Yeah.
Because the government wanted people to have less pain, and so they were part of it. So it's a complicated equation.
No, it is.
Companies
It is. It
are
certainly
clearly
is.
part of it.
There's plenty of blame to go around.
I won't take anything with that.
No, I just was gonna, because I have stuff attached to it, so I
She's
don't
gonna
think,
tackle me. And just,
I don't think you want that.
okay, I'll get everything signed and taken care of, hopefully today.
I just wanna make sure that it's signed. Then we're not missing.
I'll be chasing you guys.
So how does this work, Jim? I'm always curious about these kinds of things. So you take this to Judge Byrd. Judge Byrd approves it and signs it. Where does it go? Does it go downtown Cleveland, or where does it go from there?
Well,
What's
so then I can, you can't engage these lawyers without the court,
Right.
without us make an application to the court approving it. So it's like any other outside counsel application.
So now we've engaged them, they will file a separate
We haven't
piece
been
of paper.
authorized to engage them yet. We're gonna ask Judge Byrd to authorize the county to engage them. So, once he signs off on it, then I'll send his judgment entry and the engagement agreement that you signed and I signed. I'll send that down to the lawyers. They'll sign it, then they'll be engaged, and then we'll have them move forward with filing our own
And then they
lawsuit.
actually file their
Yes.
paperwork.
Yeah, they told me that they think they could get it filed within a couple of weeks. They'll actually file a federal lawsuit, Geauga County versus, all of those entities that we've talked about.
Good.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Okay,
Jim.
thank you guys.
Thank you, Jim, so much.
Nice seeing you.
Appreciate it.
With all the stuff that you've got going on, I think you could visit the office over there.
Yeah, it's been rough. We're getting through it though. Thank you for everything.
Thanks,
You did a
Jim.
good job.
Appreciate it. Hey,
See you guys.
Jim,
Sorry.
do you want to talk to Amy and Joe about doing a press release on that?
Well, we're going to,
Oh, yeah, they're gonna do
we're going to do a press release. We're gathering some final information, and so we'll be getting something out to
I was
you.
at Disney yesterday and I didn't get it. Didn't get it revised, so for Dave. Dave did.
I was wondering what, I was on the phone with you, it sounded like you were at a thrill park or something, and I was like,
I
what
was
is
in
it?
line for the Magic Carpet ride with my 18-month-old.
I said, hey, you got a minute? He's like, yeah, like a minute. Yeah. I'm getting on the teacups.
I'll see you guys.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
Back to the
All right, now we're going into an
So,
executive session.
gonna go ahead and move an executive session with Jobs and Family Services.
No,
So-
we don't. They'll get you
Well,
some,
like
either
when I
someone's
see
gonna get
these stories,
suspended or.
it's pretty speculative matter.
There you
go.
But I'm trying to get my children, grandchildren, like, to understand what's going on. Nothing, I hope I don't bore you with all my stuff.
You have to come back yet. Tim's not back here.
Yep. 6th.
It's flying by.
How many days to Christmas?
Let me know when you're ready.
Ready.
Okay, so we're back from executive session with action.
The Department of Job and Family Services is requesting the board accept the disciplinary recommendation of the Director of Job and Family Services to suspend Margot Rita, Program Administrator, for 8 hours, 1 working day without pay for a violation of Section 3 of the Geauga County Job and Family Services Personnel Policy and Procedure Manual, and further approve and execute the order of removal, reduction, suspension, involuntary disciplinary separation form per ORC 124.34 for 8 hours, 1 working day.
So moved.
Second?
Commissioner Claypool?
Yes.
Commissioner Lennon?
Yes.
Commissioner Spudler?
Okay.
Here's the second page.
Oh,
There's 2 pages.
Sorry, one for you, one for us.
It's an odd one, but I have to lay it out.
I keep trying to adjust it so it's more intuitive, but
Underneath
it's
them.
sort of.
It was sure exactly what it is.
sorry.
Yeah, that form's not very.
It's not, it's like, yeah, I got you.
Are you doing the flip now, too? Skip?
Yeah.
Must be the
Look at that
seat.
chair.
That was my 10-pound pen. Drops at any time.
No, it goes through the floor.
Yeah.
You gotta have your wear eye protection.
Yeah, right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Yep, have a good day.
Karen.
I'm sorry, that was inappropriate.
Yeah, so I'm not there. Yeah. Hey,
Hello.
how are you?
Okay,
Good, good.
this is the work for me.
All right.
Okay. The first one is, I have somebody, well, did you guys see her resignation? She went on and on about getting married and having children and everything. It was pretty funny. But
Last week?
yeah,
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Yeah, she was our first senior attendant, I think, which is like a semi-boss of the shift, but she's getting married and she's planning way ahead. So she's going down to part-time.
Okay.
And she's not gonna be a senior attendant anymore, she's just gonna be plain old attendant.
Mm-hmm.
That's it, that one.
Okay.
And what about the other one?
Sarah, she's going to work, her first office job, she's going to work for Denise Kaminsky full-time.
Okay.
And what we thought we could do is she could work part-time for me and full-time for her. We're gonna do it, but she's gonna, but it came down that I'm gonna have to pay her overtime. But I'm gonna do it so that we have the rest of the month to fill her position.
Mm-hmm.
So, at the end of February, she'll be resigning.
Okay.
But this is a very temporary thing, what we're doing here.
Okay. Yeah, 10, 11 together.
County Home is requesting the board reclassify Ashley Clark from full-time senior attendant number 1506 to part-time attendant number 1504-1 to be effective February 11, 2018 with an adjusted hourly rate of $12.43 per hour. The County Home is requesting the board reclassify Sarah Knight from full-time attendant number 1504 to part-time attendant number 1504-1 to be effective February 12, 2018.
Second?
Mr. Claypool?
Yes.
Mr. Lennon?
Yes.
Mr. Spiller?
Aye. And then we're gonna go ahead and motion to move into executive session for the purpose of considering the employment of a public employee at the county home.
So moved.
Second?
Mr. Claypool?
Yes.
Mr. Lennon?
Yes.
Mr. Spiller?
Aye.
Linda and Dave?
Yep.
Yep. Okay.
So we get our steps in there.
Yeah, I know.